ऑलराइट दोस्तों, कहाँ हैं हम? जी हाँ, लंदन आए हुए हैं एंड नथिंग के स्टूडियोज में बेसिकली अगले 2 दिन बिताने वाले हैं एंड इट इज़ गोइंग टू बी लॉट ऑफ फन, क्योंकि नथिंग के बारे में, नथिंग ने फ़ोन कैसे बनाया, उनका हार्डवेयर डिज़ाइन, सॉफ्टवेयर डिज़ाइन, लोगों से बात करने वाले, काल पे से भी बात करने वाले हैं एंड इट इज़ गोइंग टू बी एक्साइटिंग। जी हाँ, ये एक स्टार्टअप है जो सडनली 3 साल में बहुत सारी चीज़ें उन्होंने की है, सो वी वांटेड टू नो और इसीलिए आ गए हैं इधर लंदन में। इट्स गोइंग टू बी एक्साइटिंग। काल पे के इंटरव्यू के लिए ज़रूर रुकिएगा क्योंकि बहुत सारी इंटरेस्टिंग चीज़ें आपको पता चलने वाली है। नथिंग 3 एंड समथिंग मोर। Wow, what a day we had. And right now I'm having Adam Bates, a design director of Nothing, and I'm going to put some really interesting questions. First thing that I want to ask you, were smartphones boring earlier and that's why you bought this transparent design and glyph lights to differentiate Nothing Phone 1 and Nothing Phone 2? Is that the reason? Do you find phones boring?
I mean, I think the last 5 or 10 years they've been a little bit boring. I think, there have been exciting periods in history with phones when there's been big changes, but it feels predictable now. It feels like we know roughly what's going to happen. There's a big deal when someone adds a button now. So, I think we did feel it was time to try and shake things up a bit.
Okay. Why glyph lights? And who thought about this idea?
Yeah, well, I guess, where it starts is thinking about a product fresh. So, lots of phones now are very similar. Everyone focuses on the screen.
Yes.
And then there's some buttons around the outside and connectors and speakers, but no one really does much with the back. And so I guess there's a sort of, as a designer and as engineers, you're always looking for opportunities to do something new. And there was this area that just felt like a big opportunity. So then when you start thinking about that, you also start thinking about screen time and about getting drawn into things and about getting distracted. So is there an opportunity to put those two things together, solve that problem whilst using this new surface that no one's really used?
So you wanted to make the back more productive?
I think so, but also perhaps make the back useful at a level so that you don't need to get sucked into the front.
And look at the screen, open it, and then you get
Then you're
sucked
checking
into it.
emails and you're checking the news, and then there's,
Yeah, and today in your design studio, we saw the amount of work that goes behind glyph lights and even the sound that you are trying to create. Just amazing. Another thing, now in couple of years, again, glyph light is now like, it is, people have seen it and it's there. How are you going to make smartphones more exciting in coming days through hardware design?
because it's only been just over a year, and that's such a long time in tech, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
We are definitely thinking about this. If you look at phone 1 to phone 2, we built on it. So we've brought some more functionality. We've kind of brought some granularity so that you can do things like timers and things like that. But we have a bit of a problem in Nothing, which is we have a lot more ideas than we can make and implement. We've got lots of ideas. For us, it's always going to be based around what it does for users and how it brings functionality and how it makes things better and maybe a bit more fun as well. So but I can't share exactly, unfortunately.
Okay, yeah, I understand. I'm still going to ask you, even if you can't share, just tell me that. Nothing Phone 3, will we see anything different in terms of design?
Yeah, I think you will.
Oh, that's nice. That's nice.
Yeah.
Looking forward to that. So designing these phones, coming up with glyph lights and transparent design, what were the challenges when you were designing Nothing Phone 1 or Nothing Phone 2? What were those?
I guess there's a big challenge, given that most other phones are quite similar. There's a real pressure from everyone involved, not within Nothing, but in the industry, supply chain, manufacture, all of that. There's kind of this pressure to do the same as everyone else, especially when you're small.
Yes.
Because it's hard for people to take a risk with you. But we managed to convince people to do that. So that was a real challenge. With glyphs, there's a whole world of engineering that needs to be figured out, which is in collaboration with manufacturers. How do you actually arrange LEDs in this way on such a thin panel? There's just a huge amount of engineering with that. So that was a big challenge. Another challenge is because it's transparent, we've got so many more bits to design. So even though you're seeing lots of internal components, if you just take the back off a smartphone, it doesn't look as pretty as a nothing phone. So we just made work very hard for ourselves. We have a lot to do.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Adam. It was great pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much.
To you too.
दूसरे दिन उनके सोहो में दोस्तों उनका एक एक्सपीरियंस सेंटर है नथिंग का, उधर हम गए थे और उधर हमने जो सॉफ्टवेयर के हेड है, उनके प्रोडक्ट लीड सॉफ्टवेयर डिजाइन के हैं ब्रूनो वेगास, उनसे हमने बात की, उनसे भी बात की, सुनिए। ऑलराइट दोस्तों, हमारे साथ है ब्रूनो वेगास। जी हाँ, ये लीड प्रोडक्ट सॉफ्टवेयर डिज़ाइन है, बेसिकली हेड करते हैं जो आपका नथिंग फ़ोन में आपको विजेट्स दिखते हैं, अलग जो सब डिज़ाइंस है ना, वॉलपेपर विजेट्स, ये सब कुछ चीज़ें जो डिज़ाइन करते हैं, ही इज़ द पर्सन। और मैं इनसे ऑफ कैमरा बात कर रहा था तो उन्होंने कहा कि मुझे लगी थी कि इनकी टीम 15 या 20 लोगों की होगी, बट नो, इट्स हार्डली 8 लोगों की टीम है, राइट? यू हैव 8 टीम मेंबर्स इन योर ग्रुप। इमेजिन 8 लोगों की ये टीम जो है ये सब कुछ कर रही है, एंड ऑब्वियसली आप नथिंग फोन हाथ में लोगे तो आपको डिजाइन बहुत ही अलग मिलेगा। सो वेलकम टू ट्रैकिन टेक ब्रूनो। वन थिंग आई वांटेड टू आस्क यू अबाउट अपडेट्स, एंड बिफोर गोइंग टू इवन नथिंग, आई एम गोइंग टू आस्क यू, पिक्सेल और गूगल announced that they are going to give 7 years of update. How easy or how difficult it is to give that kind of a commitment and then coming back to nothing? You guys are giving 2-3 years major updates. So how difficult it is, and why does it take so much time to bring on these new updates? If you can just tell me.
Yeah, obviously, I mean, there's a lot of contractual obligations and processes behind the doors with Google and nothing in terms of partnership and so on. But obviously, Google owns their own ecosystem, right? I mean, they have the Pixel phones and all that. They have the full control over their own platform. For us, it's a bit different. I mean, we are an ODM just like any other. And what we're trying to do, at least from my side, and my key focus is obviously tailor the experience the best we can within the time frame where you can give support. Obviously, we would love to give as much support as we could, but another things we need to consider as well is resourcing within the team. Obviously, the longer you have, the longer span you have in terms of updates that you can give, it means you need to have more resources to take care of legacy products down the road, right? So, as a small team that we are, we need to make sure we are careful with how we balance those two things. Yeah.
Nothing Phone 2, we just tested OS 2, Nothing OS 2, and you know, it was super smooth, not at all buggy. I was actually impressed. And you know, this is just your second phone, second generation of OS updates. How much effort goes into quality testing, so that, because we hear, you know, we have updated our phone and then there are some bugs or some green line comes or something happens. With so many brands, even big brands, it has happened. Yeah. So how do you ensure that it does not happen to Nothing?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, if you notice sometimes at Nothing, we could have gone a lot bigger on the feature scope if we wanted to. Of course, it's quite easy to us to just, you know, take care and design a bunch of new features that are quite exciting and go for volume instead of quality. But for us, it's more important the quality. And we want to make sure that, obviously, as you mentioned, with a small team, we want to make sure that the product roadmap and the iterations that we do within the features that we currently have and the future ones coming in next updates are top-notch in terms of experience, right? So what we mean by that is we want to focus first on the overall experience and make sure we have enough resources to test those features very in-depth before they reach the market. And to do that, we need to be maybe a bit more constrained in terms of the amount of volume of features that we push.
So let me ask you, if we are talking about features, like Pixel again does these feature drops every 3 months, a new feature coming. So do you plan on doing something like that, where you bring one feature every 3 months or 6 months, 1 or 2 features?
Yeah, our plan is even to do better than that. Oh. So for example, you probably heard this briefly in some other videos and things like that, but basically all the widget updates now are completely detached from the main software updates. So you've probably seen already, if you are within the beta, that we have the new Nothing widget app that can be updated via the Play Store. Yeah. The main reason for that is that we can update the widgets and launch new features very quickly.
Got it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Welcome, Kalpe, to Trakin Tech. Let's say Nothing Phone 3. What should we expect?